Welcome. This is Mike Kramer. As you can see by the screen, I am the Perry Johnson Laboratory Accreditation Calibration Program Manager, and I want to thank you all for logging in or calling in and participating in this month's webinar. As you can see from the first slide, this webinar is going to encompass PJLA's SOP3, which is our accreditation symbol, and it's been expanded to emphasize a language procedure, an update and overview of SOP3. This webinar is being recorded. If you would like to receive a copy of it or go back and re-listen to it, go to our website and go to the link for recorded webinars. Also on that link are all past webinars. You might find some topic of interest, which you may want to go back and just look at the past webinars, but this one, just like all the other ones, are going to be recorded. The duration of this webinar is set for 1 hour. I don't anticipate it taking that long. It shouldn't, and at the end we're going to allocate some times for questions, where you should have on your screen a place where you can submit questions. So we're going to go ahead and jump into SOP3 symbol and overview of SOP3. So this is, as you can see, symbol and language overview, language referencing accreditation, or usage of the symbol when you're referencing your scope of accreditation. So basically, national and international end users of accreditation rely heavily on the usage of accreditation symbols, accreditation marks, symbols, and language as evidence that conformity assessment bodies, CABs. You're going to see that term used throughout the presentation, and we're going to give the definition here shortly. But a CMB, that are you folks that are actually accredited by PJLA and are utilizing our symbol and referencing your accreditation, be it on reports, marketing materials, websites. So we'll go over the definition of that shortly. Calibration and inspection reports or endorse. The use of accrediting body symbol marks are a clear indication of traceability and is encouraged to be utilized by all accredited organizations. And myself, I sort of view this when I do my fair share of assessments, and if, of course, I have to review the final output of the organization, the laboratory, the testing lab or calibration laboratory, which is the calibration certificate or the test report. And in looking at that, I quite often will need to, as objective evidence, look at, say, for example, a calibration report. Hence, if I see a calibration report which references the CAB's accreditation or has a symbol of accrediting body, be it Perry Johnson Laboratory Accreditation or one of the others, to me that's a specifying a big stamp of approval. That what's on that certificate is, of course, reference to what their scope of accreditation has encompassed, and it has in fact been assessed by that accrediting body, which is a mutually recognized third party. And basically, that stamp of approval is stating that these test or calibrations that's being referenced are in fact encompassed under the scope of accreditation, and the organization is in fact operating under the requirements of ISO 17025. So SOP3, this procedure is described the proper use of PJLA's accreditation symbol, the ILAC MRA mark, and ILAC, that's the folks who actually recognize us. That's the International Laboratory Accreditation Cooperation. And appropriate accreditation language. That's with the update of PL3. We've really emphasize the accreditation language if that's being used in lieu of a symbol. Additionally, it outlines the necessary actions PJLA will enforce when the utilization of the symbol, marks, or language are utilized inappropriately by the organization. So we're going to go over some do's and don'ts with the utilization of the logo, and also appropriate language which references the CAB's accreditation. See, there's a couple of definitions that SOP3 encompasses. CAB, as I said, that's a conformity assessment body. So if you are a lab that is accredited by PJLA and you're producing test or calibration report, that is your organization. A body that performs conformity assessment services that can be a subject of accreditation. Endorsed reports or certificates. Reports and certificates bearing an accrediting body accreditation symbol or references to accreditation. Again, these are your test and or calibration reports that you're producing. Again, in accordance with the requirements of 17011, and that is the standard that PJLA operates under when we go out and accredit you folks for your 17025 accreditation. So in accordance with those requirements, PJLA provides accreditation symbols by which holders of the PJLA accreditation symbols may make others aware of their accreditation by means of various forms of publicity. The uses of the accreditation symbol or references to accreditation are voluntarily, with the exception of issued, accredited, endorsed, test, calibration, RMP, which is reference material producers, or inspection reports. So what that's saying is, for example, the symbol or reference to accreditation on your website is voluntary. That's up to you if you want to use it there or not. Your marketing materials, things like that. When you reference it, that does have to be referenced in a certain manner, which we'll look at here shortly. However, if a test or calibration report is intended to come under the scope of accreditation, then it is not voluntary. So in other words, if you have a customer and they're needing and are requesting a test or calibration to be done under your scope of accreditation, then it is not voluntary. You have to either use the logo or reference accreditation in the appropriate manner. In 5.3 of SOP3, PJLA assessors will examine certificate holders' use of the accreditation symbol and accrediting language as a routine part of assessments. Assessors will collect objective evidence of the symbol used in their assessment package for the executive committee to review. In addition, certificate holders' documented procedures must be found to include procedures for enforcing PJL's regulations for the proper use and protection of the accreditation symbol. So in other words, excuse me, if you are accredited with PJLA, you have to address somewhere within your quality management system how you are going to comply with the requirements in SOP3 and enforce, in fact, that your company or laboratory or organization is complying with the requirements of SOP3. When an assessor will come on board, we are always looking for your symbol. Of course, test and calibration reports are a prime source of where they are to be used when you are producing reports under your accreditation. However, I would also look at your website, for example, and ask to see any other places where you might be utilizing the symbol. So the accreditation symbol or reference to accreditation as detailed next on the next previous slide shall be included on all reports where an accredited or endorsed report is requested by the customer of the CAB. So if it's specified in however your contract review is performed via a customer's purchase order, a contract, a work request, if it's specifying that it is to come under your scope of accreditation or an accredited type report, then what's coming up on the next couple of slides is how this is to be referenced on the reports. The CAB shall ensure that all customers requesting services are not misled when non-accredited or non-endorsed reports are provided. Use of the accreditation symbol or reference to accreditation shall only be associated with the service covered in the scope of accreditation and not any lines of other activities in which a CAB or its related organization shall be involved. So in other words, you may be accredited to do various types of calibration. There may be some others that may not come under your scope of accreditation. The symbol shall only be associated with those items that are covered under your scope of accreditation. This should look familiar. This has been in our SOP 3. We've expanded it. PJLA has gotten into some other areas, as you can see, in inspection and reference material producers. So the authorized symbol, if you're utilizing the symbol, shall be clearly identified with the unique calibration number assigned by PJLA to the accredited CAB. PJLA prefers CABs to include the accreditation number as shown. That needs to be within close proximity of the symbol. All relevant symbols will be provided to each CAB with the release of their certificate of accreditation. That's how the symbol is to be is required to be shown on reports of calibration or test reports when it is in fact a accredited or endorsed report. However, we don't state that you have to use the symbol when you produce accredited or endorsed reports. Here's just a further clarification of the symbol. The symbol shall be reproduced in a size that makes all features clearly distinguishable. It should be clearly identified on the report. Color-wise, the symbol may be reproduced in a single color, black and white, or the colors of the PJLA logo, as long as the colors provide sufficient contrast to make the symbol clearly identifiable. We're going to look at if you decide you want to produce in your endorsed accredited reports. However, you for whatever reason, you don't want to utilize our logo. In order to comply, this is the requirements, excuse me, which is specified in SOP 3. What needs to be referenced is the standard. In this case, 17025, ISO 17025 2005, or the relevant standard. The AB, which is us, PJLA, your accreditation number, which is unique to your organization, and then the accreditation field, your testing, calibration, reference material, producer, or inspection body. So hence, if you're producing accredited report, your customers are clearly specifying it. You elect not to use a symbol. However, in the endorsed report, all these elements need to be included on the report. And we're going to go under some rules and restrictions. There's some specified in SOPs or some do's and don'ts with usage of the accreditation symbol or statements of accreditation. It may be used on the following: legal documents. Any documents a site's not accredited by PJLA. Subcontractor certificates or documentations. Any applicant of PJLA that are not yet accredited cannot use a symbol or reference your accreditation until your accreditation has been approved. On the product or item which the CAB has tested or calibrated, and the exception is calibration labels, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in the presentation. And then again, on reports, certificates, or enclosed letters of results for which the organization's scope is not accredited by PJLA. And as a note, where test calibration reference materials or inspections outside the scope of accreditation are included, they shall be clearly identified as this laboratory is not accredited for the test or calibration mark, or the reference material producer is not accredited for the materials or procedures identified. Hence, you may have a mixture of accredited items and non-accredited items on a test or calibration report. Those ones that do not come under your scope of accreditation will need to be clearly identified. We're going to go into things that typically we'll see the symbol or reference to accreditation used on. Things like letterhead, business cards, fax cover sheets, envelopes, brochure, pop-up banners, posters, PowerPoint presentations, press releases, advertisements, websites, course reports and certificates, emails, and compliment slips. As a side note, particularly on test reports where opinions are permitted, where such statements of opinions and interpretations are outside the scopes of accreditation, the CAB shall include a disclaimer in the report of the certificate close to the accreditation, such as the opinions interpretation expressed in this report are outside the scope of this CAB's accreditation. Subcontracting. So it may not apply if you do not subcontract your test or calibration. However, we do address in SOP3s, and there's our rules and restrictions that subcontracting of test calibration and RMP activities. In the case of the CAB, subcontracts work for which they are accredited to another CAB, including branches of its own organization. The CAB may include the results it has subcontracted on its reports or certificates endorsed with the appropriate accreditation symbols or accreditation reference. The accreditation CAB shall, some of these are actually incorporated in the 17025 standard as well, shall take full responsibility for the subcontracting activity unless it is an accredited branch of the same CAB and has informed the customer of the proposed subcontracting has obtained his or her approval. CAB shall ensure that an approval has been obtained from the subcontractor to report excerpts of the subcontractor's report on the certificate. Continuing with subcontracting, ensure that a subcontractor itself is accredited by PJLA or another accrediting body recognized under the ILAC MRA for specific activities concerned, and the results have been included in the subcontractor's CAB endorsed report or certificate. If the accreditation by another subcontractor body cannot be used, you cannot use that body's symbol. So in other words, if instead of being accredited by PJLA, they are accredited by someone else, no, you cannot take that accrediting body, that's a major no-no, and put it on your certificate. We would not want to see that done with our symbols as well. When the CAB issues a report that includes a combination of both activities for which they are accredited and the activities for which they are not, possibly resulting in the use of subcontractors, then the CAB may utilize the PJLA accreditation symbol or reference of accreditation accreditation on the report. However, any results obtained by the means of the subcontractor shall be identified per the requirements outlined in 17025, and these results shall be clearly indicated as non-accredited. Hence, your results you provide may fall perfectly under your accreditation, and these are if you're including several items in a test or calibration report, and those obtained by the subcontractor are not under your scope of accreditation. You need to indicate that that they are considered non-accredited. So in other words, if you say if you're doing if you're not accredited to temperature calibration, and you include thermometers in with an accredited type report, you cannot claim the accreditation under the subcontractors. You can only subcontract things which you are accredited to and use that in conjunction with the utilization of the logo and or appropriate accreditation language. And this emphasizes it even more. When a CAB issues a report for items none of which they are accredited for, resulting in the use of subcontractors, then they are not authorized to use the PJLA accreditation symbol or reference to accreditation in any capacity. I'm going to talk a little bit about you folks that are on calibration. You occasionally come across this where you utilize our symbol on your calibration labels. So basically, SOP3 states accredited CABs may reproduce calibration labels with the PJLA accredited symbol, which are attached to the calibration equipment. The calibration shall include the following information: the name of the accrediting body, the CAB, I'm sorry, that's the calibration lab, or its accreditation number. Has to have the specific equipment identification number on the label, the date of the calibration, and last but not least, it needs to cross-reference to the calibration certificate issued in the, that should be report of calibrations, I apologize for that. So in other words, you're required in section 510 to have unique identifiers on your calibration certificates. That unique identifier, if you are utilizing the PJL logo on a label, needs to be on that label. This is an area, I'm not going to go over this very much. It's for inspections, and this is a new area PJLA is getting involved in. And if we do address it in SOP 3, and it looks like the requirements are basically the same as they are on calibration. Now we're going to look at, furthermore, away from calibration reports, when you're making claims of accreditation, i.e. on your website, on marketing materials, whatever. So when intentionally making a claim of accreditation or making a claim of accreditation that is implied by the use of particular words and phrases, the CAB must identify the standard to which it is claiming accreditation and ensure it is not associating the accreditation status to a particular status with registration or certification to another standard. And as a caveat to that, at no such time does PJLA have the authority to utilize or grant utilization of any outside recognition or oversight logos, such as those referenced there, ISO, IAF, APLAC, NACLA, to be displayed on certificates, test reports, calibration labels, or any documentation, with the exception of those outlined in SOP 3. Words or phrases are intended to be examples of acceptable and unacceptable claims of accreditation. And you can see acceptable methods of specifying your accreditation. With 17025, of course, you have to reference the standard, but you also need to reference current revision, which is 2005. And you can see various ways of referencing it here, along with a couple others, 17025 and Guide 34. These are unacceptable examples, which we've probably seen doing our assessments, which is not appropriate. The first one does say 17025 accredited. However, it does not state the current revision, 2005. Registered, that's not that's separate than accreditation. And of course, I can't be using in conjunction with 9001. So PJLA recognizes, and this is after when we made these revisions, we had some discussion behind this, and we do make this note on SOP3 that we do in fact recognize on advertising material, and this is does not have anything to do with test or calibration report. It's completely separate. That the accrediting language as described previously may impose both space and design issues. So if that is in fact the issue in that case, and please contact our headquarters to evaluate the layout. Okay, we're going to look at the PJLA symbol in conjunction with the ILAC mark. The ILAC mark, as I specified before, that is the International Laboratory Accreditation Cooperation. Those are the folks that recognize us and who we operate under in conjunction with 17011. So we're actually accredited too. We're assessed, and we are expected to operate under that standard. So the ILAC mark is more internationally recognized. PJLA, we hope, is very well recognized in North America. If you're doing a lot of business, I say overseas, and you want that international recognition, you may want to look at the ILAC mark. And so basically, PJLA allows the use of the ILAC MRA mark to be used in combination with the PJLA symbol to promote international recognition of the ILAC MRA, Mutual Recognition Agreement, and the accrediting services covered by the international agreement. The joint ILAC mark may only be used under the following condition. The ILAC Combined MAR agreement has been signed between PJLA and the accrediting body, accredited laboratory. You have to submit a draft of the use of this combined mark. It has to be approved by PJLA in advance. And then if the laboratory resides in a country where the ILAC mark is registered, you need to use it within that country. And we do provide a listing of registered ILAC companies, and that can be found on our website at that link there. And here are some examples on the utilization of the PJLA symbol in conjunction with the ILAC mark and how it's expected to be displayed. PJLA logo, of course, is displayed as previously gone over, and it can be used in conjunction as shown here with the ILAC MRA. Just bear in mind you have to assign the agreement PJLA has prepared, and you need to submit the artwork to the office for review in order to gain that approval. And just a quick do's and don'ts. The ILAC mark may be used on the following: letterhead, business cards, fax, envelopes, brochures, pop-up banners, posters, PowerPoints, press releases, advertisements, websites, reports and certificates, emails, compliment slips, calibration labels. I'm going to go over this relatively quick. Chances are this may not apply to you all. PJLA has the authority to distribute the NAI NEFAP mark and the any TNI NELAC mark, and these are basically environmental type of organization and field sampling organizations that we're talking about here. Upon recognition, PJLA allows accredited CAB laboratories or field sampling and measurement organizations to display the appropriate TNI mark in conjunction with the PJLA accrediting symbol for testing. CABs must request permission directly to PJLA for the use of the TNI mark. Where agreements exist between PJLA and the state accrediting organization exists, and PJLA has no responsibility for the issuing of the TNI NELAC certificate, including the symbol. PJLA will only assist as required in the assessment of the utilization of the mark. If at any time PJLA no longer recognized from TNI, or is no longer recognized from TNI for its offered program, then all CABs will be notified of such and will be required to suspend the use of the claims of accreditation using, including the relevant marks. So if this is applicable to your organization, we have updated SOP 3, Appendix C. We'll go over this in more detail. So the main objective of this presentation, of course, is the proper utilization of the PJLA logo, along with proper usage of the references to your accreditation. Our assessors now, of course, we look at reports. We may be provided a report which by no means falls under the confines of the requirements of Section 510, which is the 17025 section for reporting the results. And it may, in fact, have no reference to 17025 or your accreditation on the certificate, and hence is presented as a non-endorsed or a non-accredited type certificate. Our assessors are been told to now look at the contract review process or the work order or the request that accompanied these reports, just to solidify what we stated earlier in this presentation, that the organization which was provided this non-endorsed, non-accredited report were in fact not misled to believe that what they got, which in this example is a non-accredited, non-17025 compliant report, and was misled in during the contract review process or submitting their work request on their purchase order when it was indeed specified it was to come under your scope of accreditation. That's basically all I have for this presentation. SOP 3 is relatively short. I think we hit on all the major highlights here. According to major changes, which basically the usage of the symbol and the presentation of the symbol is the same. It's just a usage of the accreditation language, particularly on test, calibration, inspection reports, whatever you're producing. If they come under your scope of accreditation, it needs to include those various elements, i.e. accrediting body, PJLA, accrediting number, along with your area of testing or calibration, whichever the fact may be. SOP 3 is available on our website. Should have gotten a notification that it's been revised. If you don't have it, then need to include it in your external documents. Please update it, and you can receive a current copy directly on our website under references and documents. That's about all I have right now. The next 5 minutes I'm going to allocate for questions. So on your screen, you should have a space for submitting any questions you may have about SOP 3, or references to accreditation in general. You can type your questions in there, submit it. It's going to be forward. Assisting me and our headquarters in Troy, Michigan is our president, Tracy Sorensen, who will field those questions and will relay them to myself. So at this point, I want to stop presenting and provide 5 minutes for you all to submit your questions. And if something comes up, if your question does not get answered, or if maybe you have a question that pops up in the middle of the night tonight, you can still submit it. Please submit them directly to the web address, webinar@pjlabs.com, and we will get back to you in response to your question. So I'm going to stop here. I will sign back on in about 5 minutes and go over any questions that I may have received. Thank you. I've got a couple questions here, and go over them real here. Where is the scope of accreditation covered in 17025? Excuse me, the usage of the symbol are covered under 17025. Usage of the symbol is not covered under 17025. What's covered is, of course, on reporting the results. That's covered under Section 510. The usage as a symbol, of course, is, as far as we're concerned, at PJLA, where we are provided to operate and utilize our enforcement of the symbol and accredited language under the guidelines of ILAC. But the standard itself does not cover the usage of the symbol. Do reports with multiple pages must include the symbol on each page? No, that's not necessary. That's not needed. Basically, one requirement in 510 is you have to number the pages and total number of pages within the report. So if it's encompassed within, typically would be the first page, that's all which would be needed. Again, another question about 17025 and the usage of the symbol. Have another question about multiple pages on certificate. No, just it's one document. It's specified normally page 1 of 2, page 1 of whatever, as long as it's encompassed within that certificate. That's all that's needed. And I'm not sure exactly what this testing is about. When a scope of accreditation covers bioburden testing under 17025 and a customer submits an item for testing, such as a statute, if they request an endorsed report, are we required to provide one, or would this be considered not part of our accrediting scope? And not being familiar with that testing, if it's not part of your scope and it's by no means not covered in the specified in the test method that you utilize, and if it's any sort of range, if it's used outside those ranges, then it's not going to be included in your scope of accreditation. So you cannot reference accreditation or utilize a symbol if the report just entails that test. If it's a multiple test, as we discussed during the presentation, and say this is the exception, and you perform that test, it needs to be identified on a certificate test report that it is not covered under the scope of accreditation. I hope I answered that question. I think I'm not really familiar with the testing. But, in a nutshell, if it's not covered under your scope of accreditation, customer submits something, then you cannot reference it as an accredited or endorsed report. Bear with me. Making sure I have everything here. I got a couple replicates about multiple pages. A part of the ISO standard discusses the use of the accreditation symbol. I think you got 2 emails of the same thing. Okay, I think that covers the gist of the question. So basically, just one symbol. If it's encompassed, you have that unique identifier on the report, which is required in Section 510. You have that symbol on the first page. It's included in that report, and everything within that report comes under the if you're putting the symbol on there, it means it's an accredited or endorsed report. Again, anything which is used outside, even if you're accredited, let's say for example calibration, if you're accredited, if you're a scale company and a scale or a balance company and you're doing analytical balance and you're accredited to go up to 1 kilogram. You have a capacity to go up to 5 kilograms. However, that's not covered under your scope of accreditation. Your customer requests you to do that particular calibration up to 5 kg. I hope I'm correlating sort of in regards to the testing question there. You cannot include those points, say 2 kg, 3 kg, kg being kilogram, as an accredited or endorsed calibration. But let's say there were other points that were included under the scope of accreditation, say 500 grams, 200 grams, 1 kilogram. You can put the logo on that certificate. However, those points that are outside must be clearly identified as points or calibration results which do not cover your scope of accreditation. Okay, thank you. Again, if you didn't capture it, if you have any other questions or if I somehow missed a question, coordinating this long distance, Ms. Sorensen is our headquarters in Michigan, and I'm operating from my home base in Virginia, and we're doing it via email. So if something got lost in the shuffle and didn't get captured here, please resubmit these questions, and they'll be forwarded to myself, and I'll be happy to reply back with a response. Okay, again, we got these monthly webinars scheduled over the next several months right now. So have your calendars out. Please mark this date, the 19th of April, 2016. And the topic of the next webinar will be section 4.13, when a record is required. And myself as an assessor, section 413 is the requirements for records. Section 4.3 is for document control. I find there's a lot of, quite often, especially with new folks that are initial accreditation or seeking accreditation, there are some confusing there. What is a document? What is a record? What needs to be kept? If you would like further clarification or enforce what you already are aware of, please sign in. We'll be sending you an announcement, a link of where to sign in, when and where to sign in, and I look forward to doing the next presentation next month, April 19th. Again, thank you, and I appreciate your time, appreciate your interest in logging in and going through the presentation. Thank you.